What if I told you that discipline is not about control? That every time you white knuckle your way through another morning routine, another promised Monday, another this time will be different, you are practicing the opposite of what makes a mind truly strong. The commanders who lost their armies were not weak men. They were rigid men. They confused punishment with preparation, and so they broke. You have been taught to fight yourself. I am here to teach you to know yourself. There is a difference that will change everything. My name carries weight across centuries. I am Sun Tzu. And though we are separated by thousands of years, I see you as clearly as I saw the generals who came to me desperate, exhausted, losing wars they should have won. You and they share the same problem. You are fighting the wrong enemy. You wake up every morning and wage war against yourself, against your laziness, against your weakness, against your lack of discipline. And you believe that if you just fight harder, if you just control yourself better, if you just push through one more time, you will finally win. But here is what I learned on the battlefield. What I learned watching armies rise and fall. What I learned from studying not just war, but the human heart. The war you are fighting cannot be won. Not because you are weak, but because the war itself is based on a lie. You have been sold a version of discipline that is killing you slowly. Let me be direct with you, because I respect you too much to soften this truth. You have been told that if you just push harder, wake up earlier, say no more often, and control yourself better, you will finally become the person you are supposed to be. But that person never arrives. Instead, you cycle through motivation and collapse, productivity and burnout, promises and shame. You wonder what is broken in you. Nothing is broken in you. I need you to hear that. Nothing is broken in you. The strategy is broken. The map you have been given is wrong, and you keep walking in circles wondering why you never reach the destination. This video exists to dismantle the most dangerous myth in self-improvement. That strength comes from force. That a strong mind is a controlled mind. That discipline is about domination over your body, over your desires, over your humanity. I spent my life studying conflict, not just between armies, but within them. Not just on battlefields, but in the hearts of the men who stood upon them. And I learned this. The leader who must constantly enforce order has already lost. The leader who creates alignment wins without effort. You are trying to enforce order on yourself, and you are exhausted. I can see it in you. That particular kind of tired that sleep does not fix. The fatigue that comes from being at war with yourself every single day. From the moment you open your eyes, you are in battle. Should I get up now or hit snooze? Should I eat this or restrict? Should I work now or rest? Every choice is a battlefield. Every decision is a test you might fail. And you are so tired of failing. But what if I told you that the exhaustion is not the problem? What if I told you that the exhaustion is intelligence? Your body, your mind, your spirit. They are trying to tell you something. They are trying to tell you that discipline, as you have been taught it, is a trap. And the way out is not more effort. It is more truth. Here is what this video will give you. First, a complete reframe of discipline, not as self-denial, but as self-knowledge. Not as war against yourself, but as strategy with yourself. Second, permission to stop fighting, and a precise method to redirect that energy toward what actually builds strength. Clarity, positioning, and intelligent retreat. Third, the reason you keep failing. And I promise you, it is not lack of willpower. It is misdiagnosis of the terrain. You are using desert tactics in the jungle. You are preparing for the wrong battle. By the end of this video, you will not need to be more disciplined. You will need to be more honest. And that honesty will make you unstoppable. This is not motivation. This is not another framework. This is the art of war, applied to the only battle that actually matters, the one inside you. Let me tell you a story. It takes place many centuries ago, but you will recognize yourself in it, because human nature does not change. Only the costumes do. There was a siege. It lasted months. Two armies, locked in position, neither able to advance, neither willing to retreat. And in the camp of one army, there was a young general. Brilliant, they said. Tactical. Committed. He barely slept. Every night, he walked the perimeter of the camp, checking on guards, reviewing plans, preparing for every possible attack. His soldiers respected him. They also feared him. He was harsh with those who showed weakness, unforgiving of mistakes. He believed this made him strong. He believed this was discipline. One night, I was visiting this camp. I was older then, brought in to advise, and I watched this young general, this man who could not have been more than 30 years old, and I saw that he was already dying, not from enemy swords, from his own vigilance. His eyes were hollow. His hands shook when he thought no one was looking. He snapped at his most loyal soldiers over nothing. So I approached him. I said, "General, when did you last sleep through the night?" And he looked at me with pride, with that particular arrogance of the exhausted, and he said, "A commander who sleeps while his men are in danger is no commander at all." I nodded. I understood. I had believed the same thing once, long ago. And then I asked him a different question. I said, "Tell me, General, what are you afraid will happen if you close your eyes?" He bristled. He said, "I am not afraid. I am prepared." But I waited. I have learned that silence is often the most powerful question. And finally, quietly, he said, "If I stop watching, everything will fall apart. The men will slack off. The enemy will find weakness. I will wake up to discover I have lost the war while I slept." I looked at him with compassion because I saw my younger self in his face. And I said, "You are not preparing for battle. You are fleeing from silence." He did not understand. So I asked him to try something. For 1 week, I told him, do not patrol the camp at night. Instead, establish clear roles. Give each section of the camp a leader who is responsible for that area. Make it known that discipline comes not from your surveillance, but from their commitment to each other, to the mission, to the shared purpose. Trust them and sleep. He resisted. Of course he did. Because what I was asking him to do felt like surrender. It felt like giving up control. And in his mind, control was the only thing keeping chaos at bay. But he was desperate enough, tired enough to try. The first night, he lay in his tent, eyes open, convinced he would hear the sounds of collapse, the whispers of laziness, the footsteps of the enemy. But the camp was quiet. The second night, the same. By the fourth night, he slept. And when he woke, the camp was not only functioning, it was stronger. Morale was higher. The soldiers, given responsibility instead of surveillance, rose to meet it. They policed themselves. They took pride in their roles. And the general, for the first time in months, could think clearly, could plan strategically, could lead instead of merely patrol. Within weeks, the siege was broken, not through harder fighting, but through smarter positioning, through rested minds, through soldiers who were committed, not controlled. The emotional core of this story is this: discipline that requires your constant supervision is not discipline, it is dependency. If the system falls apart the moment you stop watching it, you have not built discipline. You have built a prison that requires a warden, and you are both the prisoner and the warden, exhausted by both roles. You are that general. And your mind is the camp you exhaust yourself patrolling. Every morning, you wake up and start the surveillance. Did I do the right things yesterday? Will I do the right things today? Am I being disciplined enough? Am I slipping? You monitor every thought, every impulse, every desire like it is an enemy soldier trying to sneak through your defenses. And you are so tired, so deeply tired. But if you stop patrolling, won't everything fall apart? This is the question I hear in your mind right now. This is the fear, and I understand it, because it feels true. It feels like the only thing standing between you and complete collapse is your constant vigilance. But let me show you what actually happens when you stop trying to control yourself through surveillance. Let me tell you about the river and the stone. This is not a story from a battlefield. This is a teaching, a metaphor, but it is as true as any battle I witnessed. Two students came to me once. Both wanted to learn discipline. Both were committed, sincere, hungry for strength. The first student said, "Master, I will be like stone, unmoved by temptation, unbreakable in routine. I will not bend. I will not yield. I will stand firm against everything that tries to weaken me." The second student said, "Master, I will be like the river. I will flow around obstacles. I will adapt. I will never stop moving. I will find the path of least resistance and follow it wherever it leads." I listened to both of them, and then I took them on a walk. We traveled for days until we reached a canyon. A massive canyon carved deep into the earth. Stone walls, towering and ancient. And through the bottom of this canyon, a river flowed. The same river that had carved the canyon itself over thousands and thousands of years. I said nothing. I simply pointed. I let them look. And I watched their faces as they understood. The stone believed itself strong because it resisted. But resistance is not strength. It is brittleness. The stone stood firm, yes. But over time, the constant pressure, the constant contact with the water, wore it away. Not through force, but through persistence, through yielding, through flowing. The river never fought the stone. It simply moved around it, over it, through it, and in time, the river won. The stone was carved into the shape the river needed. The river remained water. Your rigid morning routine, your all or nothing thinking, your "I must never miss a day" mentality, this is stone, and life is the river. You will lose, not because you are not strong enough, but because you are strong in the wrong way. You are trying to resist instead of flow. You are trying to stand firm when you should be adapting. And the pressure of life, the constant contact with reality, with your own humanity, is carving you away. You feel yourself eroding, and you think the solution is to become harder stone. But that is not the solution. The solution is to become water. But wait, does this mean you should have no structure? No commitments? That discipline is meaningless? This is what the mind asks when it hears this teaching. Because the mind, like simplicity, it wants rules. It wants to know, should I be stone or water? Should I be rigid or flexible? Should I have discipline or should I just flow? The truth is more subtle. And the truth is this: you need both, but not in the way you think. You do not need to be water all the time, and you do not need to be stone all the time. You need to know when to be which, and that requires something deeper than discipline. That requires wisdom. That requires knowing yourself so well that you can sense what the moment demands. A stone in a river is eventually destroyed, but a stone foundation under a house stands for centuries. Water flowing freely nourishes everything it touches, but water without direction becomes a swamp. The question is not stone or water. The question is, what does this moment require? And do you know yourself well enough to answer that question honestly? This brings me to another story, and this one is closer to my own experience. There was a soldier in my army, a veteran. He had fought in many campaigns, survived many battles. He was skilled, reliable, respected by the other men. But something changed in him during one particular year. I noticed it first. Then the other soldiers began to whisper. They said he had grown soft. They said he no longer trained with the same obsession. He no longer stayed up late sharpening his sword and rehearsing techniques. He no longer spoke with bravado about what he would do in the next battle. He seemed to them less committed, less disciplined. But I watched him carefully, because I have learned that what looks like softness is sometimes wisdom finally arriving. And in battle, I saw the truth. This soldier, who seemed less disciplined, was now the most effective warrior in the entire army. He moved with eerie precision. He never wasted energy. He never swung his sword unnecessarily. He struck only when victory was certain. He was never wounded. He never exhausted himself. And he won every encounter. After one particular battle, I approached him. I asked him directly, "What changed in you?" The others say you are no longer the warrior you were, but I see the opposite. You are more effective now than ever. What happened? He looked at me for a long moment. And then he said something I have never forgotten. He said, "I stopped trying to prove I was brave. Once I accepted I was afraid, I could finally see the enemy." Let me say that again, because it is the key to everything. Once he accepted he was afraid, he could finally see the enemy. Before, he had been fighting two battles: the external battle against the enemy in front of him, and the internal battle against his own fear. He was using half his energy trying to prove to himself that he was not afraid, trying to perform courage, trying to be the warrior he thought he should be. And that performance took energy. It took focus. It made him sloppy. It made him take risks, not because they were strategic, but because he needed to prove something to himself. But when he stopped performing, when he stopped fighting himself, when he accepted that, yes, I am afraid, and that is okay, that is human, that is intelligent, then all of that energy became available. He could see clearly. He could move strategically. He could fight the actual enemy instead of fighting himself. You are that soldier. You are using half your energy trying to prove to yourself that you are disciplined, that you are strong, that you are not lazy, not weak, not broken. You are performing discipline for an imaginary audience. And that performance is exhausting you. It is making you sloppy. It is making you take on battles, not because they are worth fighting, but because you need to prove something. Self-discipline begins the moment you stop performing discipline for an imaginary audience. It begins when you stop trying to be the person you think you should be and start being honest about who you actually are. And that honesty, that raw truth, is not weakness. It is the foundation of all real strength. These three stories share one hidden pattern, and once you see this pattern, everything changes. The pattern is this: true strength does not come from fighting yourself. It comes from understanding yourself so deeply that the fight becomes unnecessary. The general who learned to sleep did not become weak. He became strategic. The river did not become weak by yielding. It became unstoppable. The soldier did not become weak by accepting his fear. He became effective. And you will not become weak when you stop fighting yourself. You will become free. Free to direct all of that energy, all of that power you have been wasting on internal warfare, toward the things that actually matter. So let me give you the lessons clearly now. Let me give you the principles that will rebuild your understanding of what discipline actually is. The first lesson is what I call the discipline paradox. And the paradox is this: control through release. True discipline is not about gripping tighter. It is about loosening in the right places. I know this sounds contradictory. How can you control something by releasing it? But stay with me. Think about holding water in your fist. The tighter you squeeze, the more water escapes through your fingers. But if you cup your hand gently, the water stays. This is the paradox. The more you try to control, the more chaos you create. The more you micromanage yourself, the more you breed rebellion from within. Here is what happens when you try to be disciplined in everything, all the time. You wake up at 5 in the morning, even though your body is exhausted. You force yourself through a workout, even though you are injured. You restrict your food, even though you are hungry. You say yes to every commitment, even though you are overwhelmed. You never rest, because rest feels like failure. You never enjoy anything, because enjoyment feels like weakness. And you believe this is discipline. You believe this is strength. But what you are actually doing is going to war with your own humanity. And your humanity will always win eventually. It has to. Because your humanity is not the enemy. It is you. And when you go to war with yourself, there is no winner. There is only exhaustion. There is only collapse. There is only the cycle of pushing and breaking, over and over until you cannot remember who you were before you started fighting. This is not mastery. This is panic. This is the behavior of someone who is terrified that if they stop controlling every single moment, everything will fall apart. And I understand that fear. I have felt it. But I learned on the battlefield that the general who tries to control everything controls nothing because he is overwhelmed. He cannot see the big picture. He is reacting to everything and planning for nothing. The disciplined mind knows when to push and when to yield. It knows when to grip tightly and when to loosen. It knows when to fight and when to conserve energy. This is not laziness. This is strategy. A general does not defend every inch of the border. That would be impossible. He would spread his army so thin that they would be vulnerable everywhere. Instead, he identifies the critical pass, the one place that, if defended, makes all the other places irrelevant. He fortifies that pass. He puts his best soldiers there. He focuses all his resources there, and he lets the rest of the border remain open because he knows the enemy will take the easy path. They will come through the critical pass, and he will be ready. Where is your critical pass? What is the one area of your life that, if you focused there, would make everything else easier? Not the 10 areas, not the 20 habits you think you should build. The one, the one thing that actually matters. For some people, it is sleep. Everything falls apart when they do not sleep, and everything becomes manageable when they do. For others, it is movement, not intense workouts, not punishing exercise, but simple movement, walking, stretching. For others, it is eating real food, not dieting, not restricting, but nourishing. For others still, it is silence, time alone, time to think without the noise of the world telling them who they should be. What is yours? And here is how you know. It is not the behavior you think you should choose. It is the one that actually works. It is the thing that when you do it, you feel more like yourself, not more like the person you think you should be. More like yourself. That feeling of rightness, of alignment, that is your critical pass. Protect it. Build your discipline around it. And let everything else flex. This brings me to the second lesson. Know the terrain of your own mind. You cannot win a war you do not understand. This is fundamental. This is the very first principle of strategy. Before you plan, before you move, before you engage, you must know the terrain. You must know where the rivers are, where the mountains are, where the forests are. You must know where you can move quickly and where you will be slowed. You must know where you are vulnerable and where you are protected. Most people are fighting blind. They are waging war against themselves without understanding the terrain of their own mind. They set goals without understanding their own patterns. They make commitments without understanding their own triggers. They push themselves without understanding their own energy cycles. And then they wonder why they keep losing the same battles over and over. Let me share a principle I wrote thousands of years ago, but it is as true today as it was then. Know the enemy and know yourself. In 100 battles, you will never be defeated. Know yourself, but not the enemy. And for every victory, you will suffer a defeat. Know neither yourself nor the enemy, and you will be defeated in every battle. Applied to the war within you, this becomes: know your own patterns, your own rhythms, your own nature, and you will move through life with ease. Try to fight your nature without understanding it, and you will win sometimes and lose sometimes, always exhausted. Ignore yourself completely. Just follow what others tell you to do, and you will lose every time. What time of day is your willpower strongest? What emotions precede your collapse? What stories do you tell yourself when you fail? What triggers the voice that says you are not good enough? What situations drain you? What situations restore you? These are not weaknesses. These are intelligence. This is reconnaissance. This is gathering information about the terrain. And here is what most people miss. You cannot change the terrain. You can only learn to work with it. A general who curses the mountains for being in his way is a fool. The mountains do not care. They will not move. But a wise general learns to use the mountains. He positions his army on the high ground. He uses the terrain to his advantage. He stops fighting reality and starts working with it. You cannot change your fundamental nature. You cannot become a morning person if you are a night person. You cannot become someone who thrives on constant social interaction if you are someone who needs solitude to recharge. You cannot become someone who loves strict routine if you are someone who needs variety and novelty. And the constant attempt to change your nature, to become someone you are not, is the source of all your suffering. The practice here is simple but profound. Stop trying to eliminate your bad behaviors. Start studying them like a scout studies enemy movements, not with judgment, not with shame, with curiosity, with precision. When does this behavior show up? What need is it trying to meet? What is happening right before it appears? What emotion is present? Let me give you an example. Say you struggle with late night snacking. Every night, you tell yourself you will not do it. Every night, you do it anyway. You feel shame. You promise tomorrow will be different, but tomorrow is the same. The typical approach is to blame yourself, to try to use willpower, to resist, to lock up the food, to distract yourself. This is fighting blind. The strategic approach is to study the pattern. What time does it happen? What have you done that day? How do you feel right before you walk to the kitchen? And if you study it honestly, without judgment, you will find the pattern. Maybe it is not hunger at all. Maybe it is loneliness. Maybe it is the silence after a chaotic day, and you do not know how to be with yourself in silence. Maybe it is the only moment of the day that feels like it belongs to you. Maybe it is comfort, not in the food, but in the ritual. And once you see the true need, you can meet it directly. If it is loneliness, food will never solve it, but a phone call might. A journal entry might. A few minutes of connection might. If it is needing time for yourself, then instead of fighting the snacking, you create another ritual. One that serves you better. One that actually meets the need. When you understand the pattern, you can disrupt it. When you fight it, you feed it. This is the difference between strategy and force. Force tries to eliminate the behavior. Strategy addresses the need underneath it. Force fails over and over. Strategy succeeds quietly, almost effortlessly. This leads directly to the third lesson, and this one will challenge everything you have been taught. The myth of willpower. Here is the provocative claim. Willpower is a lie sold to people who do not understand positioning. I never relied on my soldiers being braver than the enemy. That would be foolish. Bravery is unreliable. Bravery fluctuates. Bravery fails under exhaustion, under fear, under hunger. So I never built a strategy that required my soldiers to be braver. Instead, I positioned them so they did not need to be. I put them on higher ground. I made sure the sun was behind us, shining into the enemy's eyes. I made sure we had more rest, more food, more morale. I made sure that winning was easier than losing. Your environment is your positioning. And if you are relying on willpower to resist your environment, you have already lost the battle. Let me be very clear about this. If you are trying to resist cookies in your kitchen, you have already lost. The battle was lost when you bought the cookies. Every moment they sit in your kitchen is a moment you must use willpower to resist them. And willpower is a limited resource. It runs out. It fails when you are tired, when you are stressed, when you are sad, when you are hungry. Discipline is not resisting temptation. Discipline is designing a life where temptation is irrelevant. Let me say that again, because this is the key. Discipline is designing a life where temptation is irrelevant. If you want to eat healthier, the disciplined action is not to resist unhealthy food. The disciplined action is to not have unhealthy food in your home. If you want to focus on your work, the disciplined action is not to resist your phone. The disciplined action is to put your phone in another room. If you want to exercise consistently, the disciplined action is not to force yourself every morning. The disciplined action is to make exercise the easiest most convenient option, to have your clothes laid out, to have a simple plan, to remove every obstacle between you and movement. This feels like cheating to most people. They think, but that is not real discipline. Real discipline is resisting. No, that is ego. That is the need to prove you are strong. But strength is not suffering unnecessarily. Strength is winning. And if you can win without suffering, you win twice. You are not weak for failing to resist. You are strategic for recognizing the battle was unwinnable. The shift is simple. Stop asking, how do I get better willpower? Start asking, how do I remove the need for willpower? Stop fighting harder. Start positioning better. The fourth lesson is one that our culture desperately needs to hear, but resists with everything it has. Rest is not retreat. The mind that never rests is not disciplined. It is desperate. Here is another principle from my writings. The general who fights every battle will lose the war. You cannot win if you do not rest. Not because rest makes you stronger for the next fight, though it does, but because if you fight every battle, you lose the ability to discern which battles matter. Our modern world glorifies the grind, the hustle, the relentless forward motion. The person who never stops, never slows, never rests is held up as the ideal. But this is not wisdom. This is fear. It is fear disguised as ambition. It is the fear that if you stop, even for a moment, you will be left behind. You will lose your edge. You will be revealed as lazy, as weak, as not good enough. But here's the reality. Burnout is not a badge of honor. It is a tactical error. It is what happens when you ignore the terrain of your own body and mind for so long that they force you to stop. And when you are forced to stop through collapse, you lose all control over when and how you stop. This is the opposite of discipline. Rest is strategic. It is not weakness. It is preparation. A general who marches his army without rest will arrive at the battlefield with soldiers too exhausted to fight. He will lose, not because the enemy was stronger, but because he destroyed his own advantage. You do this to yourself every day. You push and push and push until you are too exhausted to be effective. And then you wonder why you cannot perform. Reframe rest as positioning. You rest so you can strike when it matters, not strike constantly and miss what matters. You rest so you have clarity. You rest so you have energy in reserve. You rest so you are dangerous when you need to be, not depleted all the time. And here is the emotional truth underneath all of this. You are allowed to stop. In fact, you must stop, or you will break. And when you break, you will not get to choose how. Life will choose for you. It might be your body that breaks, an illness, an injury. It might be your mind that breaks, anxiety, depression, numbness. It might be your relationships that break, snapping at the people you love, withdrawing, becoming someone you do not recognize. The break is coming if you do not rest. The only question is what will break and how much it will cost you. So rest, not as a reward for working hard enough, not as something you have to earn, but as a strategic necessity, as part of the plan, not a deviation from it, as the thing that makes everything else possible. The fifth and final lesson is perhaps the most important one, and it is this: discipline without purpose is suffering. If you do not know why you are disciplined, you are not disciplined. You are obedient to a voice you have not questioned. Think about this carefully. I would never march my army without knowing the objective. That would be insane. My soldiers would walk and walk and walk, exhausting themselves. And for what? For nothing. They would lose morale. They would begin to resent me. They would wonder why they are fighting. And eventually, they would stop following me. Yet you do this to yourself every single day. You wake at 5 in the morning. Why? You deny yourself pleasure. Why? You grind through routines. Why? And if you answer, because I should, or because successful people do this, or because otherwise I am lazy, then you are not disciplined. You are afraid. You are obeying a voice of shame, not a voice of purpose. There is a difference between discipline that serves your mission and discipline that serves your insecurity. And you must know which one you are practicing, because one will build you, and the other will destroy you slowly, making you feel like you are doing the right thing the whole time. Here is the hard question you must ask yourself. Are you disciplined, or are you afraid of being seen as lazy? Sit with that question. Do not rush past it, because the answer matters more than you know. If your discipline comes from fear of judgment, from shame, from the need to prove something, then it is not discipline. It is avoidance. It is performance. And it will never be enough. You will never do enough, be enough, achieve enough to silence that voice. Because that voice is not looking for evidence. It is looking for control. The distinction is this. Discipline serves your mission. Fear serves your insecurity. How do you know the difference? Ask yourself, does this routine bring me closer to who I want to be, or does it just quiet the shame? Does this goal light something up in me, or does it just check a box that society says I should check? Does this behavior make me feel more alive, or does it make me feel more acceptable? If you cannot answer these questions, then you do not have discipline. You have obedience. And obedience to a voice you have not examined is prison. So here is the invitation. Define your war. What are you actually fighting for? Not what you think you should be fighting for. Not what your parents wanted. Not what looks impressive on social media. What do you actually want your life to be about? What matters to you so much that you would endure difficulty for it? Not because you should, but because you care? Once you define your war, then you can build discipline around it, and everything else becomes irrelevant. Everything else becomes distraction. And suddenly, discipline becomes easy, not because you are forcing yourself, but because you are aligned, because you are moving towards something you actually want, not running from something you fear. You now see the terrain differently. But seeing is not enough. Knowing is not enough. You must have the first move. You must have something you can do today, right now, that begins to shift the pattern. So let me give you 3 practices, 3 specific things you can implement immediately. The first practice is what I call the evening audit, not the morning routine. Everyone builds morning routines. Every self-help book tells you to optimize your morning. Wake up early. Exercise. Meditate. Journal. And these things are fine. But they are addressing the wrong problem. The morning is hard, not because you lack a routine. The morning is hard because of what happened the day before, because of how you ended yesterday, because of what you did not resolve, did not rest from, did not process. So instead of obsessing over your morning, I want you to focus on your evening. Every evening, before you sleep, ask yourself 3 questions. Write them down if you can, or simply sit with them in silence. The 3 questions are these. What depleted me today? What restored me today? What battle am I fighting tomorrow that I could avoid entirely? The first question helps you identify what is draining you, not to judge it, not to immediately fix it, just to see it clearly. Maybe it is certain people. Maybe it is certain tasks. Maybe it is the way you speak to yourself. Maybe it is the constant checking of emails, of news, of notifications. You cannot change what you do not see. So see it first. The second question helps you identify what restores you. And this is critical, because most people can tell you what drains them, but they cannot tell you what restores them. They have forgotten. They have trained themselves to believe that restoration is indulgent, unnecessary, weak. But restoration is strategic. It is the thing that makes you effective. So notice it. What made you feel more like yourself today? What gave you energy instead of taking it? Was it a conversation? Was it being outside? Was it creating something? Was it silence? Notice it. Honor it. Protect it. The third question is the most powerful one. What battle am I fighting tomorrow that I could avoid entirely? This question assumes something radical. It assumes that not all battles are worth fighting. It assumes that sometimes the most strategic thing you can do is not engage, is not respond, is not take on that commitment, that argument, that obligation. What battle are you preparing for that you do not actually need to fight? Maybe it is a meeting that serves no purpose. Maybe it is a conversation with someone who will not hear you. Maybe it is trying to please someone who will never be pleased. Maybe it is proving yourself to people whose opinions do not matter to you. Maybe it is maintaining a routine that no longer serves you just because you already started it. If you can identify the unnecessary battle and choose not to fight it, you have just won without effort. You have conserved your energy for the battles that matter. This is strategy. This is discipline. Not doing more, doing less, but doing it intentionally. Why does this practice work? Because you are gathering intelligence. You are not trying to fix yourself. You are trying to understand the terrain. And over time, patterns emerge. You begin to see what consistently drains you, what consistently restores you, what battles you keep fighting that never need to be fought. And with those patterns, you can finally strategize. You can design your life instead of just reacting to it. The second practice is what I call the one non-negotiable. You do not need 10 habits. You do not need a perfect morning and evening routine. You do not need to optimize every hour of your day. You need one anchor. One thing that, when done consistently, makes everything else easier. Remember the critical pass. A general does not fortify the entire border. He fortifies the one place that matters most. You must do the same with your life. Your practice is to choose one behavior that, if done consistently, makes everything else easier. And here is the critical part. Not the behavior you think you should choose. Not the behavior that sounds impressive. Not the behavior that other successful people do. The one that actually works for you. The one that, when you do it, you feel more grounded, more clear, more like yourself. For some people, it is sleep. Everything in their life falls apart when they do not sleep well. Their mood crashes. Their willpower evaporates. Their creativity disappears. But when they prioritize sleep, when they protect it fiercely, everything else becomes manageable. Work is easier. Relationships are easier. Decisions are easier. Sleep is their critical pass. For others, it is movement. Not intense workouts. Not punishing exercise routines. Just simple movement. A walk. Stretching. something that reconnects them with their body. When they move, they think more clearly, they feel less anxious, they have more energy. Movement is their anchor. For others still, it is eating real food, not dieting, not restricting, not following complicated meal plans, just eating food that is actually food, that nourishes instead of depletes. When they eat well, they sleep better, they think better, they show up better. Food is their foundation. And for some, it is silence, time alone, time without input, without noise, without the constant demands of the world. When they have silence, they can hear themselves, they can process, they can reset. Without it, they are scattered, reactive, exhausted. Silence is their strategic advantage. What is yours? And here is how you find it. Do not think about what you should choose. Feel into what actually makes a difference. Think back over the last month. When did you feel most like yourself? Most capable? Most grounded? What had you done? What pattern was present? That is your clue. That is your critical pass. And here is the test. The test is not, does this make me more productive? The test is, does this make me feel more like myself? Because productivity is a trap. You can be productive while destroying yourself. You can accomplish a great deal while becoming someone you do not recognize. But when you feel like yourself, when you feel aligned, when you feel grounded, then productivity flows naturally. It is not forced. It is not exhausting. It is simply what happens when you are operating from your center. Once you identify your one non-negotiable, protect it fiercely. This is where you focus your discipline. Not on 10 things, not on everything, on this one thing. And let everything else flex. Let everything else be negotiable. Because when your foundation is solid, when your anchor is secure, everything else becomes easier. You can be flexible everywhere else because you are stable here. And if you miss a day, you do not spiral into shame. You do not abandon the whole thing. You simply return. Because discipline is not perfection. Discipline is return. It is the commitment to come back again and again, not to an ideal, but to what actually serves you. The third practice is perhaps the most radical one, and it is this: the honest quit. I want you to give yourself permission to quit one thing you have been forcing. Not everything, just one thing. The thing you keep restarting. The thing you keep failing at. The thing you keep shaming yourself over. The thing that, if you are honest, you do not actually want to do. You just think you should. This might sound like giving up. It might feel like weakness, but it is not. It is strategic retreat. And strategic retreat is one of the most powerful moves in warfare. Sometimes, the smartest thing a general can do is refuse to engage. Refuse to fight a battle that cannot be won. Refuse to waste resources on a front that does not matter. This is not cowardice. This is wisdom. I wrote this thousands of years ago, and it is still true. There are roads which must not be followed, armies which must not be attacked, towns which must not be besieged, positions which must not be contested. Some goals are not yours. Some battles are not worth fighting. Some commitments do not serve you, no matter how much you think they should. And here is what most people do not understand. Discipline built on self-hatred is a house on sand. If you are forcing yourself to do something because you hate yourself for not doing it, it will never last. It will never become sustainable. Because the foundation is shame. And shame is not fuel. Shame is poison. It might push you forward for a week, a month, maybe even a year. but eventually it will burn you out. It will make you collapse. And when you collapse, you will not just abandon that one thing, you will abandon everything because you will be too exhausted to discern what actually matters. So instead, quit the thing you are forcing. Quit the morning workout you hate but think you should do. Quit the business idea that sounds impressive but does not excite you. Quit the relationship you are maintaining out of guilt. Quit the version of yourself you are trying to become that feels like wearing someone else's clothes. Quit it, honestly, consciously, without shame. This is not giving up. This is strategic retreat. You are withdrawing from a battle that does not serve your mission so you can redirect that energy toward the battle that does. And the moment you do this, something miraculous happens. Energy returns. Because you were using so much energy trying to force something that was not meant for you. You were trying to swim upstream. And the moment you stop, the moment you turn around and swim with the current, everything becomes easier. When you release what does not serve you, you create space for what does. You create space for the goals that actually light you up, for the commitments that actually align with who you are, for the version of yourself that is not performance, but truth. And that version of yourself is so much more powerful than the one you are trying to force into existence. Let me be very clear about something. This does not mean you quit everything hard. This does not mean you only do what is easy. That is not what I am teaching. What I am teaching is discernment, the ability to tell the difference between hard, that is building you, and hard, that is breaking you. Between discomfort, that is growth, and discomfort, that is self-destruction. Between a challenge that is worth facing and a battle that serves no one. How do you tell the difference? Ask yourself, is this hard because it is new and I am learning? Or is this hard because it is wrong for me? Is this uncomfortable because I am growing? Or is this uncomfortable because I am violating something essential in myself? Am I resisting this because I am afraid? Or am I resisting this because some part of me knows it is not my path? These are not easy questions. They require honesty. They require you to be quiet enough to hear yourself underneath all the voices telling you who you should be. But this is the work. This is the real work. Not pushing harder, not controlling more, but listening deeply enough to know what is yours to do and what is not. So those are your 3 practices. The evening audit, the one non-negotiable, the honest quit. Start with these, not because they are the only practices that matter, but because they will teach you the most important skill, self-knowledge. And self-knowledge is the foundation of all real discipline, because you cannot fight effectively if you do not know the terrain. And you are the terrain. Now let me bring this all together. Let me help you see the bigger picture. Because we have covered a lot of ground, and it is easy to get lost in the details and miss the transformation that is available to you. You came here looking for discipline. You came here hoping I would give you the secret to being more disciplined, the strategy, the technique, the thing that would finally make you the person you think you should be. And in a way, I have given you that, but not in the way you expected. Because the secret to discipline is not more control. It is less. It is not more force. It is more wisdom. It is not fighting yourself harder. It is understanding yourself better. So much better that the fight becomes unnecessary. Here is what we have covered, and here is how it all fits together. Discipline, as you have been taught it, is based on a false premise. The premise is that you are the problem, that you are lazy, weak, undisciplined, and if you could just control yourself better, if you could just push yourself harder, everything would be fine. But this premise is wrong. You are not the problem. The strategy is the problem. You have been given the wrong map, and no amount of walking faster will get you to the destination if the map is wrong. True discipline is not about control. It is about alignment. It is not about dominating yourself. It is about understanding yourself so deeply that you can move with yourself instead of against yourself. Like water instead of stone. Like the river that carves the canyon not through force, but through persistence and yielding. We talked about the general who could not sleep. The general who believed that constant surveillance was discipline. But surveillance is not discipline. It is fear. Real discipline is creating a system that runs without your constant supervision. It is building alignment, shared purpose, trust. It is understanding that if something requires you to force it every moment, it is not sustainable. We talked about the soldier who accepted his fear. The soldier who stopped performing courage and started acting from truth. And the moment he did that, the moment he stopped fighting himself, he became the most effective warrior in the army. Not because he became braver, but because he stopped wasting energy on internal warfare. These stories teach us that strength does not come from fighting yourself. It comes from knowing yourself, from accepting yourself, from working with your nature instead of against it. And when you do that, discipline becomes natural. It becomes almost effortless, not because the tasks are easy, but because you are no longer fighting yourself while you do them. We explored 5 core lessons. The discipline paradox, that you gain control by releasing, not by gripping tighter. That the more you try to control everything, the more chaos you create. That discipline is selective, strategic, and often invisible. It is fortifying the critical pass and letting the rest of the border remain flexible. We talked about knowing the terrain of your own mind, about studying yourself with the same precision a general studies the battlefield, about understanding your patterns, your triggers, your rhythms, not to judge them, not to fix them immediately, but to see them clearly, because you cannot strategize if you do not understand the terrain. And most people are fighting themselves blind. We dismantled the myth of willpower, the idea that you need to be stronger, need to resist harder, need to have more self-control. This is the wrong approach. Willpower is limited. It fails. And relying on it means you have already made a strategic error. The disciplined approach is not to resist temptation. It is to design your environment so temptation is irrelevant. It is positioning, not power. We talked about rest, about how the mind that never rests is not disciplined. It is desperate. About how burnout is not a badge of honor, but a tactical failure. About how rest is not weakness, but preparation. How you rest so you can strike when it matters, so you have clarity, so you have energy in reserve. About how you are allowed to stop. You must stop, or you will break. And we talked about purpose, about how discipline without purpose is just suffering. How if you do not know why you are being disciplined, you are not serving your mission. You are serving your fear. How you must define your war, your actual war, not the one you think you should be fighting, and build discipline around that. Everything else is distraction. Then I gave you 3 practices to begin implementing immediately. The evening audit, asking yourself what depleted you, what restored you, and what battle you are fighting tomorrow that you could avoid entirely. This practice builds self-knowledge over time. It helps you see patterns. It helps you gather intelligence about yourself so you can finally strategize instead of just react. The one non-negotiable. Choosing one anchor, one behavior that makes everything else easier. Not 10 habits, just one. The one that actually works for you. The one that makes you feel more like yourself. And protecting that fiercely while letting everything else flex. And the honest quit, giving yourself permission to release one thing you have been forcing. One goal, one commitment, one version of yourself that is not actually yours. This is not giving up. This is strategic retreat. This is redirecting energy from a battle that does not matter to the battle that does. These 3 practices will teach you the skill that matters most: discernment, the ability to know what is yours and what is not, what serves you and what drains you, what is hard because it is building you, and what is hard because it is wrong for you. This skill, this discernment, is the foundation of all real discipline. So what is the transformation available to you? What changes when you understand discipline this way? Everything changes. You stop fighting yourself. And when you stop fighting yourself, all of that energy becomes available. The energy you are using to force, to resist, to control, to perform. Suddenly, it is free. And you can direct it toward what actually matters. You stop living in shame, because shame only exists when there is a gap between who you are and who you think you should be. But when you stop trying to be someone else, when you start being honest about who you actually are, the gap disappears. And with it, the shame. You are no longer failing at being someone else. You are succeeding at being yourself. You stop cycling through motivation and collapse because you are no longer building on a foundation of force. You are building on a foundation of alignment. And alignment is sustainable. Force is not. You become discerning. You develop the ability to know which battles to fight and which to walk away from. You stop saying yes to everything and start saying yes to what matters. You stop trying to do everything and start doing what is yours to do. You find ease, not because life becomes easy, but because you stop making it harder than it needs to be. You stop fighting unnecessary battles. You stop forcing yourself through strategies that do not fit you. You stop swimming upstream and start swimming with the current of your own nature. And most importantly, you become effective, not busy, not productive in the hollow way that means checking boxes and burning out, but effective. You start moving toward what you actually want. You start building a life that is actually yours. You start winning the war that actually matters. This is what real discipline looks like. It does not look like rigid routines and harsh self-talk and white-knuckling through every day. It looks like clarity. It looks like ease. It looks like someone who knows themselves well enough to move strategically through life. Someone who is not at war with themselves. Someone who has redirected all that power toward what actually matters. You are not broken. I need you to hear this one more time. You are not broken. You have never been broken. You have just been using the wrong map. You have been fighting the wrong war. You have been applying force where you needed to apply wisdom. And that is not your fault. You were taught this. We all were. The culture you live in worships control, Force, relentless forward motion. It teaches you that rest is weakness and ease is laziness. And if you are not suffering, you are not doing it right. But that teaching is wrong, and it is destroying people. It is destroying you. Not quickly, not obviously, but slowly, day by day, pushing and collapsing, promising and failing, trying and exhausting yourself, until you cannot remember what it felt like to just be, to just exist without the constant pressure to become someone else. You have been misled, not by bad people necessarily, but by a culture that does not understand the difference between force and strength, between control and discipline, between performance and truth. And you have been doing your best with the tools you were given. But the tools were wrong, and now I am giving you new ones. These tools are old. They are ancient. They are the same tools I used to win wars without fighting, to lead armies without force, to create alignment instead of enforcing obedience. They are the tools of strategy, of wisdom, of working with human nature instead of against it. And they work just as well for the war within you as they did for the wars I fought on external battlefields. So here is what I want you to take with you. Here is what I want you to remember when you close this video and return to your life. First, stop trying to be disciplined. Start trying to be honest. Honest about what you actually want. Honest about what actually drains you. Honest about what battles you are fighting that are not yours. Honest about who you are underneath all the voices telling you who you should be. That honesty is not weakness. It is the foundation of all real strength. Second, you are not fighting yourself. You are learning yourself. And the more you learn, the less you need to fight. Study your patterns. Understand your terrain. Gather intelligence. And then strategize. Move with yourself, not against yourself. Flow like water around the obstacles instead of trying to break through them like stone. Third, discipline is not about doing more. It is about doing less. It is about identifying what matters and protecting it fiercely. It is about saying no to everything else so you can say yes to what is actually yours. It is about strategic retreat, intelligent positioning, and knowing when not to engage. Fourth, rest is not optional. It is strategic. You are not a machine. You are human. And humans need rest not as a reward, but as a requirement. Rest is how you prepare, how you recover, how you maintain clarity. If you do not rest intentionally, you will collapse eventually, and collapse is not strategic. And fifth, you must know why. Why you are disciplined, why you are doing what you are doing, why this goal, this routine, this commitment matters to you, not to anyone else, to you. Because discipline without purpose is suffering, and you have suffered enough. Ask yourself right now, what do I actually want? Not what I should want. What do I actually want? What would make me feel more alive? What would make me feel more like myself? And then ask, what battle am I fighting that I did not choose? What am I forcing because I think I should? What am I doing to prove something instead of to build something? Answer those questions honestly, and discipline becomes clear. It becomes obvious. Because you are no longer fighting yourself. You are finally fighting for yourself. And that changes everything. You are not the enemy. You never were. The enemy was the voice that told you that you are not good enough as you are. The voice that said you needed to become someone else. The voice that measured your worth by your productivity, your discipline, your ability to control yourself. That voice is not your ally. It is not helping you. It is exhausting you. So here is my final instruction to you. It is simple. It is direct. And it is the most important thing I will say in this entire video. Stop trying to fix yourself. You are not broken. Stop trying to control yourself. You are not the enemy. Stop trying to prove yourself. You have nothing to prove. Instead, understand yourself, know yourself, accept yourself, and then, from that foundation of truth, build a life that is actually yours. Not the life you think you should have, the life you actually want. That is discipline, real discipline, strategic discipline. Discipline that builds instead of breaks, that aligns instead of controls, that frees instead of imprisons. And once you taste that kind of discipline, once you experience what it feels like to move through life with clarity instead of force, with alignment instead of resistance, you will never go back. You will never again mistake suffering for strength. You will never again believe that the war is against yourself. You will know, deeply and permanently, that the war was always for yourself. And you have just won it. If this resonated with you, if something in you shifted as you listened to this, I want to hear from you. In the comments below, tell me one thing. One thing you are going to stop forcing. One thing you are finally giving yourself permission to release. One battle you are going to stop fighting because you have realized it is not yours. Write it down. Make it real. Because when you name it, when you speak it, you give yourself permission to let it go. And that permission might be the most disciplined thing you have ever done. And if this perspective helped you, if it gave you clarity or relief or a new way of seeing, share it. Send it to someone who is exhausted from trying to be stronger, someone who is at war with themselves, someone who needs to hear that they are not broken. Because this message, this understanding, is not common. Most people will never hear it. They will spend their entire lives fighting themselves, wondering why they never win. And you have a chance to change that for someone, to give them a different map, a map that actually leads somewhere. If you want more of this, if you want more truth instead of motivation, more wisdom instead of hype, more strategy instead of force, subscribe, because I will be here, sharing what I learned across lifetimes of watching people fight, watching them struggle, watching them win and lose, and distilling it down to what actually works, not what sounds good, not what sells, what actually works. The art of war was never about fighting harder. It was about fighting smarter. It was about winning without fighting when possible. It was about understanding the terrain so well that victory becomes inevitable. And the art of living is the same. You do not need to fight yourself harder. You need to understand yourself better. You do not need more willpower. You need more wisdom. You do not need to become someone else. You need to become more fully yourself. And when you do that, when you finally stop fighting and start flowing, when you finally stop forcing and start aligning, when you finally stop performing and start being, everything changes. Not overnight, not magically, but steadily, sustainably, permanently. You will look back one day and realize you have not felt that exhausting pressure in months, that constant tension of trying to be someone you are not. You will realize you have been moving through life with ease, not because life got easier, but because you stopped making it harder. You stopped fighting battles that were not yours. You stopped trying to prove something that never needed proving. You stopped trying to fix something that was never broken. And in that moment, you will understand what I have been trying to tell you this entire time. That discipline was never the goal. Freedom was the goal. Clarity was the goal. Being yourself was the goal. Discipline was just the path. And the path was so much simpler than you thought. It was just honesty. It was just truth. It was just accepting what is and working with it instead of against it. So go now. Rest if you need to rest. Move if you need to move. Speak if you need to speak. Be silent if you need silence. And trust yourself. Trust that you know what you need better than any voice outside of you. Trust that your exhaustion is information, not failure. Trust that your resistance is intelligence, not weakness. Trust that you are exactly where you need to be, learning exactly what you need to learn. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not failing. You are becoming. And becoming is not about force. It is about allowing. It is about releasing what is not yours, so what is yours can finally emerge. The war is over. You have won. Not because you conquered yourself, but because you finally stopped fighting. And in that stillness, in that peace, you discovered something you had forgotten. You discovered that you were always enough. You were always whole. You were always exactly what you needed to be. Now go live like you know it.